Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. I never liked working at big corporations. The bureaucracy, the office politics, the mandatory team building exercises. It all felt so phony and soulless to me. But when I inherited a large number of shares in my family's business after my father passed away, I didn't have much choice. As a major shareholder, it was my responsibility to be involved in the company's operations, so I took a deep breath and accepted an entry-level position at the firm. I didn't want any special treatment. I wanted to truly understand the ins and outs of the business by working my way up from the bottom. For the most part, things went smoothly at first. I kept a low profile, worked hard, and tried my best to learn as much as I could. That all changed when Karen became my department manager. From day one, she seemed to take an instant disliking towards me. I wasn't sure if it was because I didn't laugh at her unfunny jokes during meetings, or if she sensed that I saw right through her fake smiles and excessive use of corporate buzzwords. Either way, Karen made it her personal mission to nitpick my every move and undermine me at every turn. During our first one-on-one meeting, she criticized my sales figures point by point, ignoring the fact that I had the highest numbers among new hires. When I stayed back on a Friday to finalize a report, she accused me of not having a life outside work. She even had the audacity to question my educational credentials, despite them being clearly listed on my resume. Her passive-aggressive comments and unnecessary criticisms pushed me to my breaking point, but I was determined to take the high road and not stoop to her level. That resolve was put to the test during my first quarterly performance review. Right off the bat, Karen began berating me, calling my work sloppy and incomplete. She claimed that my lack of experience was a liability to the team. I sat there calmly as she continued her tirade, making exaggerated gestures and raising her voice. "I don't know how someone like you even got hired here," she shouted. "You clearly don't have what it takes to make it in the corporate world. No ambition, no drive. You'll be lucky if you even have a job after this review." I finally had enough of her verbal abuse. "Karen, I've tried to stay professional despite your hostile attitude," I said firmly. "But I won't sit here and continue to tolerate this. We need to discuss my review in a respectful manner." Karen scoffed. "Respect? You haven't earned an ounce of respect around here. I'm your manager. You answer to me, not the other way around." In that moment, I realized that I had to stand up for myself. "Actually, Karen, I don't answer to you," I replied. "Let me properly introduce myself. I'm James Wilson, majority shareholder of this company. My father was the founder and previous CEO, so it is you who answers to me." Karen's face turned white as a ghost. She sat there opening and closing her mouth, but no words came out. "This review is over," I stated. "I apologize for not making my role here clear earlier. While I commend you on your bold leadership style, your treatment of employees is unacceptable." Karen finally found her voice again. "Wait, please, I had no idea," she stammered. "Give me another chance, I can change." I shook my head. "This isn't the first complaint I've heard about you. Consider this your final warning. Improve how you treat your team or we'll find a new manager." With that, I gathered my things and walked out of the conference room, leaving a trembling, panicked Karen behind. Over the next few weeks, I observed a noticeable change in Karen's demeanor. She became more subdued in meetings, limiting her criticism to constructive feedback. Her emails transformed from demanding and abrasive to polite and professional. She implemented team-building activities focused on creating an open, supportive environment. While Karen's new management style was a welcome change, I knew she only adapted it out of self-preservation. Her desire to emotionally abuse her employees still lingered below the surface. So when an HR employee finally worked up the courage to lodge an official complaint against her, I took decisive action. I had a stern talk with Karen, making it clear this was her final warning. Any more mistreatment of staff would lead to immediate termination. Karen nodded meekly in response, claiming she was trying her best. But leopards don't change their spots. Sure enough, within 2 weeks, Karen was up to her old ways, belittling comments to junior staff, refusing reasonable vacation requests, passive-aggressive emails. She seemed determined to flex her authority. That was the last straw for me. I personally escorted her out of the building, ignoring her desperate pleas. She threatened legal action, accused me of holding a grudge, and blamed everyone but herself. I had our top lawyers draft an ironclad termination contract, preventing her from unjustly suing the firm. With Karen gone for good, the office culture dramatically improved. Employees seemed happier, collaboration flowed smoother, and productivity increased significantly. I made it a priority to have open conversations with staff and get their input on selecting a replacement manager. In the end, we hired Susan, an experienced HR professional with stellar recommendations. She emphasized open communication and created a feedback system for employees. Under Susan's caring but firm leadership, our department exceeded all its goals. As for me, I finally had the chance to focus on my passion of guiding the company's vision from my rightful place on the board. I'll forever be grateful to Karen for her indirectly pushing me to embrace my true role. But her toxic, arrogant attitude had no place in our revitalized corporate culture. She taught me an invaluable lesson. Sometimes you need to stand up to a bully, even if they happen to be your manager. The next one is a pro-revenge story. First, a little backstory. I'm a college student and cycle to campus every day. It's not a long ride at all, but I have to go through a zone where it's illegal to ride a bicycle on the sidewalk, so I'm forced to ride on the road. Most drivers don't care and just go around me, since I stay to the edge and don't make myself a nuisance. Also, I have a lousy e-bike that I commute on. This will be important later. A few weeks ago, a guy in a Ford SUV, I don't know exactly which kind, started yelling at me as he drove by while I was in the road-only zone. All the usual get off the road, roads are for cars, you're too slow kind of stuff. I get that from drivers on a weekly basis. I just ignore and keep going. This man was special, though, since he cut right in front of me and slammed on his brakes after yelling. I was able to stop before I hit him, and he floored it out of there, yelling, "Better be careful next time, bike!" I was pretty mad, but I hadn't got his license plate or anything, and I doubt anything could be done about it anyway. There was no real proof. Over lunch, I told one of my friends who works as an EMT the story, and he got seriously pissed off. Apparently, he has seen the results of a car successfully brake-checking a cyclist, and they aren't pretty. 2 days later, the same Ford SUV jerk tried to brake-check me again. I was expecting it as soon as I heard him yelling, "Get on the sidewalk, bike!" from behind, so I avoided a crash again. I told my EMT friend over lunch again, and he was even madder than before. I wanted to let it go, since I can't really do anything about him, and my bicycle isn't going to win in a crash. This guy keeps trying to brake check me every few days during my morning commute, whenever we're on the same patch of road at the same time. About a week ago, my EMT friend told me that he told my story to one of his friends in the campus police, who was equally pissed off. The two of them wanted to catch this jerk driver. The plan was to have the policeman parked on the side of the road in hopes of catching and pulling over the jerk. I heartily agreed, and the officer pulled some strings and had himself posted on speeder catching duty for that stretch of road. A few days passed uneventfully with no sign of the road rager. I saw the cop parked in the same spot on the side of the road every day, a spot where the road has a left turn lane and a straight lane. Finally, I'm pedaling along and I hear the familiar voice scream, "Get the hell off the road, ducker!" I yelled back, "Catch me then!" and took off. I was spinning my scrawny little chicken legs as hard as they would go and pegged the throttle. I guess this made the driver even madder because I heard his engine roar as he pursued me. He shifted into the left lane as I stayed in the right. I looked to the side and saw a nasty old man in the driver's seat with the passenger window open. His mouth was going like he was yelling, but I couldn't hear him over the wind noise. I saw the police car's spot approaching and started to slow down. Taking the opportunity, the driver swung right in front of me. I don't know if it was the speed or his anger that made him swing wide, but he cut across my lane and crashed straight into the back of the police car. I barely applied my brakes, slowed down to about 15 miles per hour, and crashed into the side of his car. The officer got out, spitting mad would be an understatement, and called an ambulance and another police car. Everyone was unhurt since the jerk was only going like 25 miles per hour, but there was enough of an impact to trigger the SUV's airbags. The jerk ended up getting arrested for driving drunk. Seriously, who drinks before 9 a.m.? For an illegal lane change, and probably other stuff too. I don't know all the details. I imagine that causing a crash like that would entail some additional charges. The guy ended up having to pay for extensive repairs on the police cruiser and for a new e-bike to replace the one he destroyed by cutting in front of me. The frame snapped. On top of that, I hear that his car was declared totaled by his insurance company since the airbags went off. So he also has to pay for a new car. With any luck, he'll lose his license from the drunk driving charges and won't be able to menace cyclists again. The next one is a petty revenge story. Back when I was 17, I worked at a dental surgery as a receptionist. The first patient of the day was unnecessarily rude to me. She complained to me that the dentist hadn't called her in yet and demanded to know why. I called the dentist, but he didn't pick up the phone, so I told the woman that she would be called in shortly and to please be patient and understanding. She was the first patient of the day. She commented that because I was so young, I probably didn't check her in as waiting properly and that I'm useless at my job. But I stayed professional and reiterated that she would be called in shortly. It might not be relevant, but this woman was approximately 50 or 60 years old. Her dentist called her into his room 30 seconds later and then left her in the chair and came to me and asked if I could be his temporary dental nurse as his usual one had not turned up to work. This was why the lady had to wait for so long, 5 minutes. It was nothing to do with me not putting down on the computer that she had not arrived. I walked into the room, and the lady's face fell when she saw that I was her dental nurse. She was previously smiley and happy with the dentist, no complaints to him about the wait time. I deliberately didn't suction her mouth properly during her scale and polish because she was so rude to me, and it made her gag. She was then rude to the dentist and ripped out her impressions, a cast of your teeth, before they had set because they also made her gag. She told the dentist that he was useless at his job because of this. The dentist, who had been qualified for 15 years at the time, was annoyed and explained to her not to rip out the impressions before they had set, because then they were unusable, and tried to do the impressions again. But the same thing happened. After this, the dentist said she would have to rebook her appointment since he was running late by over 25 minutes at this point, and other patients had begun to complain about the wait times. The dentist told me to book the lady another appointment at reception since by this point, his actual dental nurse had turned up, so he would ask her to clean up and prepare the room for the next patient. When I reached the reception desk, the dentist called me and discreetly asked me not to book her next appointment with him, but to book her in with the owner's daughter instead, since she had the authority to refuse service to rude patients. I smiled politely and asked the lady when she would like her next appointment for, but she just told me to F off and stormed out without rebooking. Her husband, who had been seated in the waiting room this whole time, apologized to me for his wife's behavior before he left. Once the owner found out and asked me and the dentist what had happened, a note was put on her file and she was denied any further appointments because of her rudeness when she tried to call up and rebook. She would have been called and notified, but she had given us an incorrect number that was no longer in use. The next one is a malicious compliance story. A while ago, I was in charge of training for a large organization. I mostly handled the organizing. For a fictitious example, I might coordinate with the Dean of Medicine at Yale to come and give a speech to 200 employees. Our usual location was a large auditorium classroom, complete with a podium and computer. The aforementioned dean might show up with a PowerPoint that he needed to run, etc. So I had my 2 admin assistants show up at 7:45 a.m. each morning to ensure that the room was ready for whatever speaker lecturer was there, as the usual start time was 8. Sometimes, as was bound to happen, computer issues arose. Not too often, maybe once or twice a month at most. Perhaps the dean couldn't pull up his PowerPoint. So, we'd call our IT guy, Gary, who was 2 offices away, and he'd come and fix the problem. Everyone was happy, until Gary retired. His new replacement, Todd, didn't like the arrangement. Though his start time was 8, he'd often drift in at 8:10 or 8:15. This was not good when we were having a computer crisis at 8:02. Furthermore, he hated walking into the office and immediately having a call waiting for him. He wanted to have his coffee, read his email, and ease his way into the workday. Can't blame him there. So Todd decided that he would no longer attend our computer calls. He told me to have my admin assistants troubleshoot the problems, since they were there anyway. He was pretty hardcore about this until I pulled out the job description of my assistants, and nowhere did it say that computer repair fell under their workload. I then showed him his job description, where it said that computer repair was part of his responsibilities. Enter malicious compliance on Todd's part. You want me to attend? Okay, then we do it by the books. No more calling me directly. You need to call the central helpline and have them open a user ticket. Then I'll attend. I pointed out the foolishness of this. It's 7:54, I have the Yale Dean of Medicine, and he can't work his PowerPoint. I need it fixed now. I can't spend 15 minutes waiting on hold for the next available help desk agent, then 15 minutes explaining the problem to them, then have them open a ticket and send it to Todd, then another 20 minutes before Todd responds to the ticket. We can't have 200 people waiting for 45 minutes for Todd. Too bad, he said with a smirk. Those are the rules. Or, you could just have your admin ladies fix the problem. I tried one last-ditch effort to reason. When the CEO is going to give a speech and the computer shorts out, he doesn't have to wait 45 minutes. So obviously you can make exceptions. Common sense says this should be one too. Nope, Todd said. The CEO's staff do what's called a preemptive ticket. They submit it ahead of time and have me there on standby in case things do go wrong. So yes, even he has to do the ticket process. Okay, Todd, I see your malicious compliance and raise you one of my own. The next morning, I sat with coffee in hand and waited, smiling in anticipation. Sure enough, my door burst open with a furious Todd. What the heck is this? He snarled, waving a printout. I had submitted preemptive tickets for every day for the next 3 months, requiring Todd to be at my training room at 7:45 every day, just in case there was a computer emergency. Even better, I had contacted his boss's boss and received authorization to change Todd's work schedule due to operational requirements, so he would now be required to work from 7:3 instead of 8:4. Or you could just pick up the phone when I call and come over. We agreed that the ticket process would not be necessary, and he would show up as needed. The next one is an entitled people story. This was a while back, but an excellent example of sheer entitlement. A flight from NY to Cairo had a seat configuration of 3 rows of seats, 2 window and aisle on each side with 4 or 5 middle seats in the center. I had a window seat over a wing. I had chosen this seat with sleep in mind many months in advance. While I do frequently travel, I'm not going to pretend that I often jet away to Egypt, so this vacation was very planned out. I was settled into my seat when my aisle mate approached me and asked if I'd be willing to switch with his wife so they could sit together. The two of them seemed to be with a group of similarly aged travelers, and it appeared to me, based on their chatter, that it might have been some kind of group tour. Knowing the industry and that the organizers may have been negligent in seat assignments, I was absolutely willing to consider a swap if the seat was comparable. Naturally, I asked where his wife's seat was. He pointed, and she waved at me from the center of the middle seats. My response was, "No, sorry, I'm going to keep my seat." Instead of switching with a middle seat person, who I'm sure would have been delighted to take an aisle, so he could sit next to his wife, he sat down in his seat and started trying to argue with me. He mentioned how the view was bad anyway, since it was over the wing, and I wouldn't see anything since it's mostly overnight and dark, etc. I just replied that I planned to sleep against it and declined again. I was trying to be pleasant, I'm a pleaser, and I was stuck next to this guy. He continued to bug me like the mosquito he may have been in a former life and asked me, "If you had a husband, wouldn't you want to sit with him?" At this point, I was totally irritated. I stated that I do have a husband, and if my husband and I were traveling together, I'd not only ensure our seats were assigned together, but if they weren't, I'd give up my aisle and go sit with my spouse in the middle. He then shut up with direct comments, but grumbling persisted throughout the flight, just not to my face as he pretended to ignore my existence. Perfect ending. He was still grumbling when we deplaned. The next one is an entitled parent story. I'm sorry to hear that you had to go through such a distressing experience at Walmart. It's unfortunate that you and your service dog were subjected to harassment, especially when you were following the necessary regulations and had the appropriate documentation. It's important to remember that service dogs play a crucial role in assisting individuals with disabilities, and they are legally allowed in most public places, including stores like Walmart. People may not always be familiar with the laws surrounding service dogs, so it's essential to educate them when necessary and stay calm in such situations. You handled the situation correctly by showing the police your service dog's identification and your medical note, which should have clarified your rights to have your service dog with you. It's also good to hear that the store staff was supportive and provided you with assistance during your medical episode. In the end, The manager taking action to ban the woman from the store for a year was a suitable response, and the police issuing a warning for wasting their time was appropriate. Remember, service dogs are there to assist individuals with disabilities, and their presence is protected by law. If you encounter such situations in the future, try to remain calm and patient, and educate others about the importance and rights of service dogs when necessary. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.